Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, a show celebrating and questioning one of the most beloved entertainment companies in the world through honest, passionate, and clear-eyed Disney discussions. I'm Jeff DePauli, your entertainment-obsessed host with rose-colored glasses removed. Today in the show, I'm chatting with my friend Janson about his experience working in numerous different divisions of the Walt Disney Company. Janson's journey really is quite remarkable, as he began working in attractions at Magic Kingdom and eventually ended up at the Walt Disney Animation Studios and beyond. There were lots of steps in between, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale of Janson's Disney journey.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Hello, Janson, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast. First time. How's it going, my friend?
It's swell, Jeff. How about yourself?
It's pretty good, and I gotta say, folks might be, probably don't know your name, although they should, frankly. But let's first discuss how we actually met. How long ago was the sleepover? That's gonna sound weird. The sleepover is the title of a show, but how long ago was that?
Oh, yeah, the show The Sleepover, not the sleepover that we have every week.
Exactly, our weekly
different.
Ritual of, Are You Afraid of the Dark viewings and pillow fights.
Yeah, so the sleepover was... Boy, I did it for the Hollywood Fringe Festival last year, but I did it before that as well, October of 2020. It was an immersive 90s middle school sleepover experience that I was hoping to do at a real house for the Fringe Festival in 2020, and when COVID hit, I was like, well, maybe I could somehow turn it into something that could be done on Zoom, and somehow I was able to make it work.
And that's how I discovered your brilliance. I was an audience member of the sleepover, and it was such a fun, interactive, total 90s nostalgia, practically written for me kind of show. And there were a lot of Nickelodeon references, which I loved, but I'm trying to remember, were there some Disney things? I think, did a Disney Adventures magazine make it into the show?
Yes, and
okay.
Strangely enough, I have this collection of 50 or so Disney Adventure magazines. I got them from when I worked briefly in Disney Publishing, and I saw this box in the hallway. It just said "free, take if you want," and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" And I look through, and it's literally pristine, untouched copies of all these Disney Adventure magazines. Someone had clearly been a publisher when they were released in the 90s and had them, and I was like, I don't want these anymore. And I hoarded them like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I was like, I'll take them, yes. And I grabbed them and ran back to my desk no, this is mine.
That's amazing. So do you have the Rick Moranis covers? Because I have the two with Rick Moranis on the cover. Those are the only ones that have survived for me.
Yes, I have the Rick Moranis covers. I even have issue 0 that was not... it was, I think, something that you could only get in a box of cereal as a promotional thing to advertise that they were going to start these Disney Adventures magazines.
That's amazing. I'm going to actually have to look through those sometime. That's really, really amazing.
Absolutely.
But so in any case, I saw your show. I was impressed by it. I looked you up. You happen to live down the street from me. So we connected, and then you started telling me about your Disney journey, and it kind of blew my mind because, obviously there's a lot of different positions within the Walt Disney Company, but you have hopped through quite a few of those positions, and it's one of those things that I don't know if it's as common these days as it was when you were there. I don't know. Everything seems to be run very, very differently, but I wanted to talk to you about that journey. So we'll start at the beginning, but before we get there, was working for Disney a dream for you, or did you just happen to kind of fall into this?
Kind of. I mean, so in 2000 2007, I was living in Savannah, Georgia. I had gone to Savannah College of Art and Design and graduated in 2005. And in 2007, my girlfriend at the time graduated, and we were looking to make a move out of Savannah, out of Georgia. We didn't really know where we wanted to go. She was a huge Disney fan, and I was a Disney fan. I've been, a bunch of times as a kid, but not to the level that she was. And so it was her idea. She said, what if we would go interview to work for Walt Disney World? And I said, sure, let's do it. So we went down, scheduled an interview, and I remember during my interview, I had in mind, if they gave me a choice of anywhere to work, I knew where I wanted to work, and it was the Great Movie Ride. It was I was like, that's the coolest place. You get to perform. It's so fun. So I remember and my interviewer asked me, is there anywhere you would like to work if you could? And I was like, funny you should say, I'd love to work at the Great Movie Ride. She said, we get that a lot. Unfortunately, there's nothing available at that park right now. But you seem like you're a performer. Would you be interested in possibly working at the Jungle Cruise? And I was like, yeah, that'd be really cool. I hadn't really thought about that, but it's a similar performing style. So she said, great. I got the role. I went to orientation about a month later, and on my piece of paper they gave me, it said at the top ATT, and I was like, oh, that must stand for attractions. And later I found out, no, it stood for Aladdin Tiki Treehouse. And I don't know if she lied or was mistaken, but 3/4 of the people in my group that were training were all getting fitted for Jungle Skipper costumes, and I was being put in these colorful pajamas, and I was so sad. I was like, what is happening right now? Later on, I would I got to train at the Jungle Cruise, and I discovered, I like the Tiki Room more. It's less pressure. It's indoors, and you don't lose your voice at the end of every day.
That's really funny. The only thing that would make this funnier, and I don't think it ended this way, but did this girlfriend at the time of yours who was obsessed with Disney, did she get a job with Disney? Because if she didn't, that would be the funniest part.
She did, and coincidentally, eventually she would, during her time there, would become trained at the Great Movie Ride.
Oh.
So it's funny how that works.
Man.
That meant I got an inside track, though. I got to learn all the cool stories.
You would have been great on the Great Movie Ride. I can totally picture you doing that. That would have been so much fun.
It's one of those jobs that you hear about, and just knowing the people that worked on there, it seems like such a blast.
Yeah. Okay. So you start as an attractions host at Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, Magic Carpets of Aladdin, and the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse. So basically, you're in Adventureland.
I am, and I should say it was the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management, which is everyone's favorite.
You got under new management. All right, okay.
I'm a big defender of under new management. By the way,
I was going to say that show gets too much crap. It was not that bad.
It had its entertaining elements to it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, defend it a little bit, please, because too many people just crap on it.
I mean, Gilbert Godfrey alone just carries that show, as the voice of Iago. I'll say this, I did go in with very little knowledge of the original, and I had heard there was, the people who were big fans were hardcore original Tiki Room stands, and, didn't like that it was changing. This was my first knowledge of, this is the Tiki Room. Oh, okay. And then I would learn later, no, not at all. But, it's got a great pre-show. It's got just interesting. It keeps it going. There's never a dull moment. It's always one thing to another. And one thing that was fascinating me about it that no one really knew, there was something in that attraction that was designed to make it look like when Iago gets sent away by, the Tiki Goddess of Disaster, the animatronic in the ceiling goes up and these red feathers fall to the ground. And what you had to do as an attractions host there is where you would sit in the corner, that was the other end of the tube, and it was like a vacuum suck. And you would take a handful of red feathers and place them in there every show, and that's how they would get refilled. And the lighting just didn't hit it, so no one ever saw the feathers fall. But I would reload it every single time in the hopes that someone would see it, because I thought it was such a cool feature.
Oh, man. That's really interesting that it was not something automatic. I feel like
Yeah.
Most attractions are hit go and it goes, but there's actually like kind of a practical element to it.
Yeah,
Huh.
and I will say my very first day of training, I was given the stick to wake up Jose, and I walk, and they're like, "You're gonna do great, go up." And so I go up, and I say, "Hi, everyone, welcome to the Enchanted Tiki Room, yada yada yada." And now it's time to wake up Jose. And I go, "Wake up, Jose!" And I'm hitting the stick on Jose's perch. Nothing's happening, and out loud I went, "Oh, I forgot to press the button." And my trainer went, "No!" I went, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't say that. Sorry." I got better.
That's amazing. I love that. That's great. Do you have any man, any stories? I doubt anything all that exciting happened over at the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse, but maybe for the magic carpets of Aladdin? I don't know. Any good stories with those two?
Swiss Family Robinson rarely was it was like that was you got stationed there if it was 4th of July weekend and there was an actual like line of people waiting to get on to walk through. No, not really with Magic Carpets of Aladdin, though I can recite, like I say it in my dreams sometimes, the Aladdin safety spiel.
Please, let's hear it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Aladdin. My friend Genie is a real safety net, and he wanted me to remind you to stay seated with your seatbelt fastened nice and tight throughout your flight. And hey, everyone, make sure you keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside, and be sure to watch your kids. And then he would refer to Genie, who would say something in Spanish. Now, if you want to make your carpet fly higher or lower, riders in the front row should push up or pull down on your lever. And if you want to make your carpet tilt backwards or forwards, riders in the back row should press that magic scarab. And with a little help from the magic lamp, we're off to Agrabah.
Man, the stuff that stays in our heads.
You hear it over and over and over again. It gets locked into your brain.
Now, I'm fast forwarding here, but in your future Disney gigs, which of course we'll get to, did you ever work with Scott Weinger, the voice of Aladdin? And did you ever have to like direct that voice or anything?
I did not, unfortunately.
You got close. I mean, you were in that world of those, things.
And you've got the great episode of Full House where they went to Disney World, and he was featured in the episode. I think he was.
He dressed as Aladdin.
Yeah, because DJ keeps seeing him everywhere, and he's not really there. She just misses him. But yeah, they had him put in the parade. That was so fun.
Yeah. All right, so eventually you're doing the Adventureland stuff. You hop over to Liberty Square.
Yeah, the two of them, the two parks shared, so you could cross-train at both Adventureland and Liberty Square attractions, yeah.
The two lands shared.
The two lands, yeah.
Yeah, and actually I should mention, did you do Pirates as well over in Adventureland?
I did Pirates, Haunted Mansion, The Riverboat, Tiki Room, and Aladdin. And Jungle Cruise.
All right, there's so much to get to, but I want to make sure, are there any special memories from any of those other attractions?
Special memories with all of them. I would say my favorite attraction to work at was always at the Haunted Mansion because it was partly air conditioned. You didn't really have to smile. You kind of got to act creepy. Whenever I got rotation to go into the stretch room, after the stretch room would end and the door would open, there would be a bat sound effect that would flutter through. And I would always walk behind the very last person walking out of the room and like blow in their hair just a little bit. It sounds creepy. It doesn't sound as bad as it is, but they would like 3 out of 4 times they would freak out and like whip at their hair. And I had a bad habit of doing that.
That's the extra magic they're looking for, right?
Right, exactly.
Did you enjoy the attractions gig? It kind of sounds like you did.
Very much so, yeah, and I was lucky that I got to train at so many wonderful e-ticket attractions that like are, famous and are beloved. Yeah, the Jungle Cruise was the only one that I was like so looking forward to, and after training, I put it at the bottom of my bid sheet only because I was like, a day, maybe 2 out of the week is good. Any more than that, and you are exhausted. Your voice can't go anymore. I don't know how people do Jungle Cruise full time just as the attraction alone. The break room is outdoors, so during the summer you're just sweating all day. More power to them. It's a tough attraction to work at.
Yeah. All right. Well, you went on to some even cooler stuff at Walt Disney World because you worked as part of the Dream Squad during the Year of a Million Dreams. And
yes, indeed.
This was super iconic. Just in case people listening don't remember, can you remind them what the Year of a Million Dreams was?
Yeah, the Year of a Million Dreams started in 2007. It was one of their annual
2006.
2006. Thank you.
Yeah, October 2006.
Appreciate that. It was one of their campaigns they created to bring people into the park. This campaign was they're going to give out a million prizes to guests over this 12 to 16th month period, because it was supposed to end at the end of 2007. So you could just, as a guest, be in the right place at the right time, and you'd win anything from Mickey Mouse ears or fast passes to all the rides in that park, all the way up to an overnight stay in Cinderella's castle, a trip around the world to all the different Disney parks. It was so popular that they ended up extending it at the end of 2007 into another year of 2008, and that's when I did it in 2008.
Did you ever get to go to the Cinderella suite?
I did, yeah. I got to. They trained us all to that's one of the things we got to do during training is go and explore the suite. It's small, but it's beautiful. It's like, and you're in the castle. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah, I've never seen it in person, but yeah, that sounds right. When I see photos even, I'm like, oh, that looks tiny, but it's obviously luxurious and just stunning. So that's kind of a cool part of the job. What were some of the things that you were doing as part of the Dream Squad? I mean, you were giving out the prizes, right? So actually, tell me the process. How did you select people? Was it really just, and did you use it to perhaps meet girls that you wanted to meet?
I did not do that. Though we did have big followings of people who called us frosted blueberries, because we would put on. So the costume for Dream Squad was a short sleeve button blue shirt. And anytime we were about to distribute prizes, we would put these white vests over them, hence frosted blueberries. People knew to keep an eye out for us, because if they saw us, they're like, oh, they're giving out prizes. They would try to run to us and scope out what ride we were going to, and then get in line for that ride in hopes to win prizes.
Why would you put on the vests? Wasn't that kind of a giveaway?
Well, what you would do is you would put on the vests. So you would go to the location, go backstage, then put on the vest, then walk out from, let's say you're at Star Tours. You'd put the vest on in their break room, then walk to one of the simulators. But they knew what the Dream Squad outfits were even without the white vests. Gotcha. And so they would chase us or try to follow us and act cool and pretend that they're in hope that they get right at on the ride right at the right time. But we had a team of coordinators and managers who worked kind of globally for us in terms of working with these randomizing computers that would pick every day. One of the 4 parks is going to award Cinderella's Castle Suite overnight, and then every park is going to have 3 to 8 prizes randomly distributed. Most of the time they were Mickey Mouse ears, pin lanyard sets, and fast passes. But then you had some bigger prizes like dinner at some restaurant, or a special VIP viewing for the parade, or huge trip, prizes that they would give out occasionally, a trip around the world to all the different Disney parks, all, everything paid for.
Now you can do that for $110,000 through Adventures by Disney.
You can pretend that you were a lucky recipient of the Year of a Million Dreams. But yeah, so every morning we would go to this duffel bag in a locked safe and open it up, and it would have these envelopes, and it would say, open this at exactly 10:18. So we knew the envelope ones were the big prize packages because it wasn't a physical thing. And then it would tell us specifically where to go. The Great Movie Ride, whoever's, in row 6, seat 3 from the left at exactly, 11:12, that's going to be the winner. And you have to go up to them and tell them they've won a big prize. And a lot of times we'd walk up to people and say, hi, can we talk to you for a moment? And they would go, no, thanks. We don't want a timeshare. They thought we were trying to sell them something. And we had to convince them, no, this is something you want. And sometimes people would just walk away, and we'd have to give it to the next person.
Wow. So you really was that just the big prizes that it was that specific? I didn't realize you had no say in who was selected. I kind of thought it was at random, in the sense of the cast member would randomly choose somebody.
No, it was always decided, even if it was something you had a duffel bag of 100 Mickey Mouse ears, it would say, go to the Tower of Terror at 12:14. Whoever's in Library A wins the Mickey ears. There might be only 22 people in there, so you just stay in there, you give them all the Mickey ears, they watch the pre-show, leave, and then the next group comes in, you give them the next, 38 people, the Mickey ears, and you just keep going until you're out.
Wow. I didn't realize it was like that kind of high tech and strict.
It was the same people that run the sweepstakes, or that run like the awards for the Oscars, ran this sweepstakes. It was super legal.
Huh. That's interesting. And your base for that were you mainly in Disney's Hollywood Studios for that one?
Correct. Yeah. When you got on the Dream Squad, they would put you in one of the 4 parks.
Okay, that's really quite interesting. That led you to guest relations, which means you became a plaid, didn't you?
I became a plaid, I did.
My gosh, and that's kind of the dream gig for a lot of people. Where were you with that, and kind of what were your responsibilities?
Oftentimes, you would interview and then be placed temporarily for a few months at a park to see if you're a good fit. And then sometimes you would be, but they wouldn't have a placement like full-time available. So you go back to where you're working before and then do another stint at that location or a different one. So I got to work for a few months at Downtown Disney, and then a few months at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And then finally I did a 3-month stint at the Magic Kingdom. And that's where I ended up getting a full-time status.
If they don't have that full-time status available, like, are you in risk of becoming unemployed, or would you just go back to your previous job?
You just go back to your previous job. They'd hold it for you.
Now,
I mean, depending on, I will say, like working attractions, they would hold it for you.
Okay. That's got to be interesting because I assume there's a considerable pay difference. And you're like, I'm trained to be, a plaid, and now I'm going back to the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse.
There was a little pay difference. I don't remember it being too much. But yeah, I did like it was certainly a feeling of, I don't know. It was fun though to like get to do this thing for 3 months. That was so fun. And then kind of go back and, do some of the attractions that you missed working at, and like, try to see if you can get another temporary assignment at a different park.
Now, we're making this sound really easy. Like you hopped from one job to another, which you did, but like, from what I understand, it's a bit of a cutthroat process, a bit of a long process, and the timing just has to kind of work out in a lot of cases where certain positions need to be filled. Was that your experience, or was it really as easy as we're making it sound?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't easy. Like every every job at Disney, you're going through an interview process. Sometimes it's multiple interviews. And yeah, I was really blessed to be given the opportunities just to interview at all. I mean, even like with the Dream Squad, my first experience of it was just, I didn't really know about it. I was working at the Magic Carpets of Aladdin, and these people came up in these vests and like started giving stuff to everyone. I was like, what is going on right now? This is amazing. This is so cool. And I found out about it, and I ended up reaching out to my managers and asking if they'd like help support me in like interviewing. And a lot of them told me, if you had just like submitted and not talked and spoken to us, you probably wouldn't even make it to an interview, because we didn't know you had any interest in this. This is the first time a lot of us have been talking to you because you fly under the radar. I realized I was like so focused on, I'm just going to do a good job and keep my head down, that I wasn't even, I realized I should have been finding the things I was passionate about and then going to my managers and saying, hey, this is something that's really cool. What can you tell me about it? Instead of being like shy and being like, oh, I don't want to bother anyone, which is kind of how I was like coming across. So luckily, they helped me kind of do some preparation for that interview, and just like interviews in general.
Well, that's really cool. It is a weird thing when you go to a boss and you're like, hey, I see this opportunity. I want to take it, which means I want to quit where I am right now. And like that, even and if you're a shy person, that just is even more pressure. But like in general, that's kind of a weird concept to be like, hey, help me leave the job that I'm at that you're the boss of. Cool.
Exactly. That I might come back 3 months from now and need you to like put me back into scheduling.
Yeah, it's so wild. All right. So, I mean, already it's kind of crazy how much you hopped around Walt Disney World. At guest relations, part of the job is the tour stuff, right? Every plaid eventually gets trained in that, I assume?
No, it's another thing that once you become statused with guest relations after a certain period, and I think they would hold interviews for VIP tour guide once or twice a year. Once that time came around, again, you could interview for it, and then go through the interview process, and if you got the role, you would go through the training, and then there would be kind of similar, these periods of time where you would step away from guest relations to do nothing but tours for about 3 months, maybe 6 months. And this was in 2009 and 10, so it might be different now. But then you would go back to your guest relations training for a period and then kind of apply to do it again for a block of time.
Oh, that's really weird. Is that just to keep it fresh? I don't know. Like, what's the thought behind that?
I think to keep it fresh and to keep it fair, like, because they had so many people who wanted to be tour guides or who were trained, and only so many tours, especially during like slower seasons. You wouldn't find a lot, like nearly as many tours being requested as, say, like summer or spring break.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely become a bigger thing since then. Like when it came to the plaids and tours and stuff, I feel like it used to kind of be a secret. It was really for the diehard Disney fans who have gone like a billion times and stuff. And now, I mean, the amount of private tour guides just doing like the cut the line sort of situation, it's advertised. I feel when I was a kid, that was something you only saw celebrities do. And now it's just kind of commonplace, it seems like.
Well, I think it's certainly marketed that way, where you see it, like the only time as a kid you would see VIP tour guides is in like on TV shows, or like you'd hear about it in the news, or like see it in the news. But I feel like majority of the time, like 90% of tours have always been just families purchasing them, and then the other 10% have been celebrities that have needed the tour guide.
So interesting. So what tours did you give?
Celebrity-wise, I did take Kevin Hart and his family once, which was really cool. I got to take some of the cast of Newsies on Broadway because they were filming something special for the Christmas parade. And so for about a week, myself and another tour guide took these like 6 guys, and they brought like the choreographer and one of the managers, the stage managers for the show, like with them. And we just had a blast, like going around everywhere with them. They were fantastic.
You do realize, like, I'm obsessed with Newsies, right? Do you know this about me?
I don't know if I know that about you.
Oh, gosh. So you took Christopher Gattelli around, the choreographer?
Yes. No, it was, I apologize. It was the assistant choreographer.
Okay. That's so cool. So that was like, what, 2012-ish? You were doing that?
That would have been 2011 or 2012.
Yeah. Would have been, wow, interesting. No, I remember that on the Christmas Day special, and that was so cool. But, like, did you give any of the tours that were, the Keys to the Kingdom tour or anything like that?
Yes. So I was a tour guide for the Keys to the Kingdom and the Family Magic tour, both in the Magic Kingdom.
What were the difference between those two?
Keys to the Kingdom was built for, like, adults. It was kind of the legacy of Walt Disney and how specifically Walt Disney World came into existence. It was about a 4 to 4.5 hour tour, and included lunch, and you would take them on a few rides. And it was a lot of like walking around and just talking legacy and like history of the park and of Walt. Family Magic Tour was kind of like a scavenger hunt for families with little kids. You would go around, look for clues, and maybe there's like certain props, and usually at the end or in like the middle you would get to meet Peter Pan. It was usually like based around, like when I did it, you were like looking for Captain Hook's hook, and there were all these clues that had been spread around.
Gotcha. I took the Keys to the Kingdom tour. I think that was the first behind the scenes tour at the Disney parks that I ever did. And I really loved it. I mean, clearly I'm a Disney nerd, and I was probably a teenager when we did it, but I loved it. It kind of really got me into, like, every time I went, I would be like, okay, I'm doing one of these behind the scenes tours. And I haven't done one in a long time. I think the last one I did was behind the Seeds tour at the Land at Epcot.
Yeah. That's another great one.
Yeah, a lot of them stopped because of pandemic. I don't know how many have come back yet, but it is something that if you've been to the resorts a number of times, I always highly recommend it. It can get kind of pricey, which is not fun, especially since you usually need to buy theme park admission on top of the tour price. But there was a tour I took that was, I want to say, like 7 hours, and it took us to Magic Kingdom and Epcot and like backstage in some of the warehouses and stuff. And I forget what that one was called, but it was pretty epic.
It might have been called Backstage Magic.
Oh, I think
Magic
you're right.
Backstage.
Yeah,
where you go to like multiple parks and you get to go kind of like behind the scenes. Yeah, that's definitely for like hardcore fans, because you're taking up a big part of your day to go on that one. But yeah, you get to see really cool things.
So was this something when you were training for that kind of stuff? Did you have to like really study hard? Because frankly, like I feel like I could do 2 days of studying and like give that tour probably, just because I've got too much Disney knowledge in my brain.
It was tons of studying. It was a very long training process. I found myself doubting myself at certain times if I could really do this, because there are chunks where you're doing more storytelling, and then there are chunks where you're doing a lot of statistics. And the part where there would like be statistics, I would be like, I can't remember these numbers. Let me tell a story. I can do that. But like during training, there was like a part where they would, you'd walk through the park and they'd go, okay, now Janson, you take it from here. And I'd get right where the park where we'd have to do like statistics. I'd be like, I don't know what to say right now. I'm sorry. I failed you all. Can I tell a story about the Haunted Mansion? But no, it's like once you would finish your training, you kind of got to make the tour a bit of your own, and you got to, except for certain specific areas, you kind of got to make the tour, you got to talk about what you wanted and like handpick, these are all the things I find really interesting. These are the things I'm going to talk about.
One thing I always remember when I take those tours, or notice I should say, and it always bothers me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the tour guides are allowed to sit ever, except for maybe the lunch break. But I can remember points where like my guide would be like, okay guys, take a seat in the shade, rest. And they would have to stand, and I'd be like, sit down. And it's like, oh, I can't. And I'm like, well, you can't sit. This is cruelty.
I don't. I mean, it might have been. Honestly, for me, I would cheat by taking my group on more than one ride, because you would go on a ride, but you could go like on up to 3, and I would do that. I would take them on the Jungle Cruise and Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion, because I knew I had worked on them, so I could tell them about that. But then also, yeah, you just get to like sit on the ride with them and like tell them all kinds of stories. That's kind of how I would cheat and like take little breaks here and there.
That's hilarious. I love it. So when you're being trained for those behind the scenes tours and also the VIP tours, which are the separate kind of like private things, is that all like the same training, or are those actually 2 different positions?
2 different positions. Yeah. Because you're learning like specifically information and stories for the group guided tours, as opposed to VIP, which is more really being able to handle any situation that's thrown at you. The family suddenly wants a dining reservation for dinner that night, so you're looking at your BlackBerry to see what's available. Or they decided that half of them want to go to Splash Mountain and the other half want to go to Big Thunder Mountain. So figuring out, okay, which attraction has no wait, and just sending that half there, and you take the other half directly through the FastPass line. Like handling emergency, it's a lot of just being able to like know exactly what to do in any given circumstance, and like making it seem seamless, like you're not frantically like going through your brain, okay, what do I do?
So that's interesting. You mentioned like a dining reservation. First of all, you dated yourself by saying with a BlackBerry, but
oh, absolutely.
When you're looking at that, like say somebody wants a reservation somewhere where there is no availability, and these are people who are paying top dollar for this private tour, like do you just make it work, or do you have to convince these people, nah, you actually want to go somewhere else?
Depending on who it is, especially if it's like a celebrity that the company wants to keep happy, you might be able to reach out to managers and say, is there anything we can do to like squeeze them in? It's just 2 people kind of a thing. Otherwise, you're just basically spinning another restaurant for them and be like, I know you all like this. Unfortunately, it's unavailable, but you should be happy that's unavailable, because a different restaurant is available, and I like this one even better, and here's why. And just like convincing them, like, okay, I guess we're going to go there. Great. When it just happened to be the only restaurant that was available.
Oh, man. Alrighty. So after that, you move on to something called Once Upon a Time Is Now. And this is something I'm completely unfamiliar with, so you're going to have to enlighten me.
This was basically just orientation for specific Magic Kingdom cast members. You would interview for working in Walt Disney World. You would get put in a role, and then once you'd go, and I forget if it was before or after your first official day of training. I think it was before. You would just come dressed in business casual, and as a big group, you'd have two facilitators walk you through the entire park and say, here's the park that you're going to be working in. Let's have some fun. We're going to tell you some stories. It's kind of like its own Keys to the Kingdom tour. We were just talking about, like, here's the Magic Kingdom and here's how we're different from Disney's Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom and Epcot. This is your home, and we're going to tell you everything you need to know about where to get costuming and and all the different rides and restaurants, and how to get to the bus at the end of the day and walk through the utilidors and all the different things they'll need for working there.
What were some of the backstage things that you loved? Like, everybody, knows about the utilidors underneath Magic Kingdom if you're a fan, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who, it would be a dream to go under there. And I don't know, was there anything like that where you're like, I can't believe I get to see this little piece of backstage magic?
That's a good question. I think for me it was just being able to... I love a great anecdote. I love a story that's like, look at this. Here's a story I'm going to tell you. It's going to start out with a little piece of trivia, and it's going to lead to this fascinating backstory that no one ever knew, or that not a lot of people know. And then being able to be the one to tell that to people, because they're always fascinated. Like, I love talking to a big group of people and them going, what? That's crazy. That's so cool. It was always one of my favorite parts of facilitating those kind of tours, is being the one to share kind of the legacy and the fascinating stories.
I remember taking a tour and going under the stage of the American Adventure. And that was like such a cool experience, because I'm obsessed with the American Adventure. I honestly think it's one of the greatest productions ever produced. I think it's phenomenal.
Highly underrated, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's just so well done. And so going under that stage and seeing the animatronics under there and how that whole grid system works, like, blew my mind. The other attraction I would love to do that for, and I don't think there's any tour or anything that does this, but I would kill to go behind the scenes of the Carousel of Progress. Oh my gosh, that would be a dream.
I did get to take early on, after I started working at the Haunted Mansion, we got to take a official backstage walking through it, like a tour before the park opened, and that was amazing, to be like standing in the ballroom and to be like walking the track and seeing how like the Pepper's Ghost effect works and what the actual animatronics in the ballroom look like. And getting to be brought through by Ginger, who was a Haunted Mansion maid that had been there for decades, and she was fascinating and had all these great stories. That was really cool.
That's very cool. Now, you did have a performance background, and all of this time, you were kind of performing. I mean, tours are a way of performing, but you eventually end up as a streetmosphere performer at Disney's Hollywood Studios in a very famous role, part of the Citizens of Hollywood. Very beloved characters. How'd you end up there?
So, yeah, I had graduated with a degree in theater and performing. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to become an actor. Went to Walt Disney World, and you would see them, post these auditions for shows like the Hoop-Dee-Doo Review and the Dapper Dans and, like Finding Nemo the Musical, the Citizens of Hollywood. So I would go to these auditions for, the 7 years that I was there. Really cool experience, nerve-wracking. But yeah, I would go, and sometimes I'd get called back for certain things, but I'd never been cast in anything. And so my last year there, I was kind of burnt out on the auditions, and I was just like, I don't know, like the not knowing, the going to auditions and then like maybe being called back, but never really hearing back if you got it or not. You just, if you didn't hear anything, you knew you didn't get it. And just the rejection, I was like, after this, I'm going to one more audition, and then I think I'm going to take a break for a while. And it was for the Citizens of Hollywood. And I don't know if it was because I went in with this different attitude of like, man, I don't even care anymore. But that was the audition that I got cast in the Citizens of Hollywood. And that was like my dream role of being in that show. I was like, if I could choose any show in Walt Disney World to be in, it was that one.
And the thing that's interesting about that is, that was probably one of the toughest auditions, because that's an improv sort of position. Whereas, if you're going in for Finding Nemo, not that that's not tough, but like obviously you need to be able to sing, dance, puppeteer, or whatever, but at least you know what you're going for. Whereas I feel like with improv, that's a very special skill that a lot of people can do, but not a lot of people are great at.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're auditioning for a musical, you have sheet music. You know exactly what you choose a song and you sing it, and that might get you sent to a callback where you get more sheet music and you're working on a song specifically from the show that you go in for. With something like Streetmosphere, you'll audition with maybe a monologue from something, but if you get called back, they're telling you, create a character, create a monologue for this character, and show us, something funny that you have. And it's all on your shoulders, like what kind of a performance and like who this character is and what you can give to them, and yeah, like you say, they are looking for someone who can improvise. So like in that callback, they might talk to you after your monologue and have you stay in character and try to answer questions that people are asking you about who you are. And you're just trying to make them laugh. And the longer they're not laughing, the more you're just sweating and going, oh God, this is going terribly. Oh, I just wanted to end.
So who was your character in The Citizens of Hollywood, or did you do multiple?
I did one character. He was part of the smaller team of the Hollywood Public Works, who were like the Three Stooges kind of plumber characters. There were always three of them. My character was Wrench Oddman. It was quite a name, quite a character. He was from Diversa Falls, Georgia, and he just had a giant foam wrench, and he was one of the goobles, one of the morons in the group. He always had the boss who's trying to do like some simple task and get the two others to help him, and it should take 5 minutes and then they can go on their union break. But the simple task of like measuring the street from here to there always takes 30 minutes because the two other guys keep screwing it up.
Now, you never got to the great movie ride, but I would argue that you got the cooler performance role at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Pretty cool.
It was a dream come true to spend a year with them. Absolutely.
I remember you telling me once what the secret word was if you needed to get off stage. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. So I was taught that the secret word, if you ever needed to express to your other actors, what I'm about to say is outside of character, you would say, frankly, we need to get out of here. That was their signal that, oh, okay, something's up and we need to walk back now. Let's take them sincerely for what they're saying and follow their direction instead of like staying in character and going, no, let's keep doing this.
Yeah, I know one of the other things with the mascot characters is if they cover an eye or something, that's code for get me off stage sort of situation. So the frankly thing I didn't know about. So that's interesting. But that would be the last thing that you did at Walt Disney World before you headed west. How did this big move west come about and take you to the Walt Disney Animation Studios, which is a big leap in career from working at a theme park to going to the Walt Disney Animation Studios?
Yeah. So my current wife and I, at the time, this was 2014, we were looking to make a move to Los Angeles. We both had friends who had made the move from Florida to Los Angeles. A lot of them were working for the Walt Disney Animation Studio. So we took a trip out there, met up with them, got to meet a lot of people at the animation studio, and that led to a number of interviews that we would do like back in Florida over Zoom, back and forth. And eventually we both got jobs working at the Disney Animation Studio. Mine was for production coordinator for a team called Classic Projects that would basically manage every high quality clip of a Disney animated film so that if it was requested from a news outlet, if it was used for something maybe in a show in the park, like a projection show, they would come to us to get the highest quality versions of those. And if one was requested that hadn't been cataloged yet, we would work with a third party to take the masters of those films, get the clip, get it cleaned up, and send it to whoever requested it, and then we have it kind of in our archive for if another group requests it. It all came from the fact that one day, Disney realized that the clips they were handing out for people for like news outlets and things like that were really poor quality, and they needed to up the quality of these clips.
When you say classic projects, was it like a certain year of films that you were cataloging that were the classics, or was it anything in the library?
It started out as, it was originally called Special Projects, and it covered everything. And then eventually they split it up into two different groups. One was Classic Projects, and the other, I think, was Legacy Projects. Classic would do basically anything before The Princess and the Frog, and then Legacy was anything after.
Okay. So you do that for a couple of years. You end up, I believe they closed that division or something, right?
Correct. Yeah, they closed the Classic Projects team. Yeah, so I, did some work on my own for a while, finally working through a temp agency, got a job working with Disney Games and Apps in Glendale as an executive assistant. And spent a little under a year working with them.
And then after that, you went on to being an editor in publishing, right? Disney Publishing?
Yeah, so that like time working as an executive assistant was just a temporary assignment. Luckily, it ended up lasting almost a year. But then eventually I was able to move into another temporary assignment working as an editor for Disney Publishing. And then once that assignment ended, luckily, just at that time, I happened to be working with a small team that got an assignment to create a choose-your-own-adventure kind of experience with Olaf. They had been reached out to by Google, who wanted something for their smart speakers. There was going to be an Olaf Frozen special released in theaters, and they wanted something to tie in with that. They had gone to a third party to write it, and they weren't happy with how it turned out. So they were like, "Is there anyone on your team who would like to take a stab at writing this?" And I was like, "Yes, me. I'll do it. I'll try. I'll do it. Whatever you want." And so I wrote this Olaf Choose Your Own Adventure thing. And how these would work on the Google Smart Speaker is you'd have a Disney character telling a story or talking to you, and then there'd be these certain prompts where they would say, what do you think? Should I go left or right? And then the speaker would listen to you, and you'd say, right. And it would hear you, and you'd hear the character say, okay, we're going right. Let's see what happens. And all these different branching storylines. So I created this experience with Olaf. At the last moment, like 3 days before we had to record, we found out we had to pivot. We couldn't use the Olaf experience anymore. So over the weekend, I wrote a Mickey Mouse experience because we knew we could get Brett Iwan, the voice of Mickey Mouse, in the studio ASAP. And I put this story where he needs to get to his magic show, and you're helping him get through the city. And Google's like, great, we like it. And we did it with Brett, and they enjoyed it so much. They said, great, we're going to order a slate of these for like the next year and a half. And so I did about a dozen more of these kind of audio only stories and experiences with interactive experiences with Disney characters.
And why couldn't the Olaf thing happen? They just couldn't get Josh Gad or something?
I don't even remember what it was. But it was just something, I think, to do with scheduling. Yeah.
Interesting. And so that was the story producer and writer position that
Correct.
You did on those. And that's so funny because that's where I did the Disney trivia voiceover stuff that I did when I first discovered that you were in this position. And you're like, yeah, I was doing those Amazon Echo Dot games and stuff. I was like, holy crap, did you write what I read? And unfortunately, no, because that would have been really insane. But it's still kind of funny that we were working on like the same projects at the same time and didn't know each other. It's kind of wild. I love it.
Absolutely.
And that was the last thing that you did with the Walt Disney Company, right? That took us through 2019, I believe, right?
Correct. Yes. And then, just like other things, you've got these opportunities with Disney all the time. And sometimes if you choose to take them, like when I chose to take this writing thing, they told me, just so you know, what if and when this ends, you will not have a job to go back to. Is that something you want to risk? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. This like writing has kind of become my passion. It's something I really want to attempt, and I had the pleasure of creating all these different experiences with a great team for about a year and a half.
And yeah, unlike the theme parks where they're like, yeah, we're holding that position at, the magic carpets for you. If when this Year of a Million Dreams thing ends, it's not the case when it comes to corporate Disney, unfortunately. But I hear that all the time. And it really kind of sucks because when people move on to new positions or have great opportunities, you're throwing away your tenure at the company and really risking a lot. And huge, honestly, it's a huge problem that I wish that they would resolve, because it shouldn't be that case. If you're at the Walt Disney Company, it should really be honored. I know there's a lot of red tape and corporate, lawyers and stuff to get involved with that, but I wish that's something that they would resolve and figure out, because nobody should really have to question, like, hey, this is great for my career, but could really screw me in the long run. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, when you take those opportunities, you're also thinking like, okay, is this something that possibly, I might not have a job at Disney when I get done with this assignment, but is what I'm doing within this assignment going to help me with my career? Is putting this on my resume really going to help me boost my chances at another creative job in a similar role? And a lot of times when you're kind of thinking of like rolling the dice with that, that's what like your biggest factor is. Is this something that I'm going to learn a lot from in a short amount of time, that I'm going to be able to like put in a resume or a portfolio that really stands out, as opposed to what I would be doing if I stayed at this safe job knowing that I have a full-time status?
Now, I assume that you have no regrets as far as taking that temporary job with all that writing for Google.
Absolutely no regrets. It was awesome. Kind of what propelled me into the writing that I have done today, especially getting into kind of immersive experiences over the last few years. I don't know if I would have had the courage to try it if I hadn't been thrust into this role of writing these like interactive stories for Google.
That is awesome. I love that. Well, if you were to return to the Walt Disney Company and you could choose any department or position, what would you choose these days?
Oh, it's got to be the citizens of Hollywood, the Hollywood Public Works. Even though, and it's
I'm not even talking parks. I'm talking the whole company. You'd go back.
Sorry. It's a toss between going back to write for Disney in some capacity. Going back to the citizens of Hollywood was always like one of the best times I had. But yeah, like just doing something creative for Disney, especially if it involves writing and kind of producing sometimes live elements.
Was Imagineering ever like a goal for you?
Oh yeah. I went to the lunch with an Imagineer event that you can purchase. I would talk to Imagineers. I remember they had something called the Creative Idea Forum. That was, I think, a part of Imagineering or story writing, where occasionally you could put a portfolio together and then present it to Disney Imagineers and show writers of like, here's something I think would be cool in the parks. And I put together a project that would have turned the streets of America in Disney's Hollywood Studios into a Pixar land. And I was like, and here's how you turn, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids Playground into a Bug's Life. And here's how you turn...
How dare you touch the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set adventure. I hate this idea.
But what if I said we were turning Rick Moranis into a character from A Bug's Life? Is that okay?
Well, that's a little weird, but it makes it a little bit better. I always say, I have a friend who is a show director at Imagineering for Disneyland, and I'm always like, dude, you need to take Pixie Hollow and stick Rick Moranis there one of these days, dude. Like, what the hell?
Even if it's an Easter egg, yeah.
Oh gosh. That's so funny. Well, that's really cool. So you've had quite a few adventures. I mean, it's really, really crazy. I'm curious, all of that time, we all hear the term cast member. A Disney employee is a cast member. Were you always a cast member, or is there like a delineation in certain positions where like you don't get the cast member title, you're just a Disney employee? Or is it always cast member?
I mean, I feel like it's always cast member. It's certainly in the Disney parks, that's kind of what's given to you all the time. You are a cast member. I'll say like, when you're in the parks, you're always wearing a name tag. When you work outside of the parks, oftentimes you can, but you're not required to. And so I would wonder if the absence of the name tag kind of takes away the cast member title. But I know people who, I called myself a cast member even when I wasn't working specifically in the parks. If I would like, when I would explain my role with Disney, I would say I'm a cast member. Here's what I do, and the department that I work in.
Well, that is a crazy journey. I'm going to say it's not over. Hopefully you'll end up back there sometime doing something you love. But for now, that journey is wild. But shall we move on to some trivia?
Let's do it.
Do you know the answer? Get your brain gears churning and play along. It's trivia time.
Now, before we jump into some trivia, I want to let folks know that for this month, August of 2022, I'll be matching 100% of any new Patreon member's subscription to True Colors United. True Colors United was co-founded by Cyndi Lauper, and there they implement innovative solutions to youth homelessness that focus on the unique experiences of LGBTQ young people. So, by becoming a patron of DCTC this month, you'll not only gain rewards available to members of the Patreon page, but you'll also be supporting this great cause. To learn more about the rewards available, simply click the Patreon link in this episode's description, and to learn more about True Colors United, visit truecolorsunited.org. And of course, I'll include that link in the show notes. Now, Janson, do you want to hit me with a trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
I'll hit you with the trivia question.
All right, let's hear it.
All right. My very first attraction, as I was saying earlier, the very first one I was ever trained on, was the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management.
Mm-hmm.
A classic. Everyone's favorite attraction of all time. We know. So my trivia question for you is the pre-show of the Enchanted Tiki Room.
Phil Hartman and Don Rickles.
That's not my question, though. Well, it's half the question.
Okay.
Right. Phil Hartman and Don Rickles did provide the voices of two birds. What were those birds named? And the follow-up question, where else could you have heard the voices of Phil Hartman and Don Rickles in Walt Disney World? Not at that time, but at various points in the history.
I like it. I believe it was William and Morris after the William Morris Agency. Is that correct?
It is correct, yes.
Okay. And then Phil Hartman, you could hear in the extraterrestrial alien encounter. He replaced Tim Curry's role when they made it more comedic, right?
I think it was...
Or was it Phil first?
I think it was flipped the other way around, yeah.
No, because it went from serious to less scary, I believe.
It went from less... Well, I know that it went from Phil Hartman to Tim Curry within the alien encounter, and then, of course, they turned it into completely comedic with Stitch's Great Escape. Which I
believe went to Richard Kind at that point, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right, yeah. But I think Phil Hartman was first. Do you remember what his character's name was?
I have no idea.
It was Tom 2000, which stood for Technobotic Oratorical Mechanism Series 2000.
Alrighty. Rickles, of course, we got Mr. Potato Head. And
Mr. Potato Head. A fun thing I learned, and again, you hear a lot of things. It could not all be true. I knew people who worked at Toy Story Midway Mania who said, the Mr. Potato Head audio animatronic, which in itself is fascinating because, I don't know if you know, it was partly controlled by a cast member. It would be part of the it was part of the rotation. You'd go to a computer screen and you'd have cameras that would show on the people in line, and you would basically combine words to make sentences by pressing buttons. So you'd say, "Hey, you in the blue shirt, who's your favorite toy?" And then they would say, "Mr. Potato Head," and you'd press a button that would say, "I like your style, kid," Or if they didn't say Mr. Potato Head, you'd say, "Wrong, it's Mr. Potato Head," things like that. They had a gag that I thought was really funny that they ended up having to take out. And the gag was Mr. Potato Head would choose a woman in line, and he would say, "Hey, you, ma'am, you in the red dress. We're gonna play a game right now. I'm gonna guess your weight."
Oh no.
And Mr. Potato Head says, "Your weight is about 45 minutes.
Why did they have to cut that? Come on.
From what I understand, people were complaining when Mr. Potato Head would tell them how much longer they had. If it was longer, they would say, "Mr. Potato Head said we only had 45 minutes and it was actually an hour and a half." I'm very upset because it's just an arbitrary joke. But I think they ended up just being like, don't do it because we have too many people complaining.
That's too funny. Okay, that's a solid reason. I thought you were getting a little PC, and I was like, but he didn't even make the joke. So that's funny though. I like that. Anyway, my trivia question for you is: as we discussed, the Year of a Million Dreams ran from October 1st, 2006, through December of 2008. But what was the name of the Walt Disney World celebration before the Year of a Million Dreams? As we know, there's always a celebration going on.
Boy, there is. And that's a tough one because I came in at the Year of a Million Dreams, so I wasn't working there the year prior.
I'll give you a hint. It really wasn't about Walt Disney World. It was more about another Disney park.
Oh, okay. So it was to celebrate Disneyland's 50th anniversary?
That's correct, yep. Do you remember the name of that?
It was called... Hey, everybody, it's Disneyland's 50th anniversary. Let's party!
So close, so close.
You're going to say it and I'm going to go, oh, I do.
It was called the Happiest Celebration
on Earth. Yes.
And that ran from May 2006 through September of 2006. And actually that was for all of the parks around the world. We're all celebrating the happiest celebration on Earth, except for at Disneyland. They actually called it the happiest homecoming on Earth there. So
the happiest celebration on Earth is the reason that Walt Disney World got such fabulous attractions as Soarin', Lights, Motors, Action.
Yeah, Lights, Motors, Action Stunt Show, and the Cinderella Castle Show. It was a show that came from Tokyo, I believe.
Yeah, because they all kind of like,
because each
all
of the
parks gave each other attractions.
Yeah. Which is that's kind of funny actually when you think about it. It was just Disney being like, let's just do copycat stuff, make it cheaper for ourselves, easier for ourselves, but we'll make it part of a celebration and give a reasoning behind it. Therefore, it's justified.
Exactly.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Janson, thanks so much for coming on the show and having this fun little chat. Before you go, is there anything you want to plug where people can follow you or watch what you're up to? Because you're always doing something real fun.
Yeah, I'm on social media. I'm terrible at being on social media like Twitter and Instagram, but you can technically follow me there. It's at Janson L. L is for my last name, Lalich. I will say, if you're in the Los Angeles or Burbank area, I've just finished writing an immersive murder mystery that will be a live event. It uses the characters that's might sound like they're from Cheers, but they're completely different characters. They've got different names and everything. Legal, don't sue me. And they're vampires. And so one of them during the show is murdered, and so then it becomes your job to interrogate these suspects and look for clues and vote at the end for who you think killed the vampire at a random Boston bar. And so I think it's going to be going up sometime in September or October. So keep an eye and an ear out for that.
What's it called again?
It's called Boston Bar Bloodsuckers. Okay.
And what's your website? You have a website where I'm sure you'll post about that, right?
I do. It's jansonlalich.com. JANSONLALICH.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Janson.
Jeff, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z, Coast to Coast, on your favorite podcast app. This episode has been executive produced by Robert Scontrino. Gain rewards like Robert, including access to never-before-heard episodes and live-stream Q&As, by visiting the Patreon link in this episode's description. Basically, anything you need can be found in this episode's description, from additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, to the DCTC hotline where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the DePodcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at DePodcastNetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.